said, from Hama, from the largest protest to date, and they are chanting what is arguably the most famous slogan of the Arab uprisings. And it is essentially a very simple one that started in Tunisia and was echoed in Egypt and then in Libya and then in Bahrain and Yemen and Syria. And this was very much a slogan that was responsible for the uprising in Syria, because a few young school kids ended up spray painting it on a wall in Daraa. And by doing that, they ended up getting captured by the secret police and were beaten. And when they were sent back to their families weeks later, there was a huge protest calling for their release. And that was essentially the very first protest of the Syrian uprising in Syria. And this phrase, which I haven't said to you yet, you're probably on the edge of your seat waiting to know what it is a very simple one. الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. The people demand the fall of the regime. The people want the fall of the regime. And this chant, as you'll hear, was said by hundreds of thousands of people all over Syria, but in this particular case, in Hama. And this square where this was recited is called Asi Square. And Asi is disobedience. And it's called that because the river that flows through Hama is called the disobedient river because it flows in the opposite direction from all the other rivers in the region. And so the square is named after that river. It's called the Asi Square. The Latin term was the Orontes, but the Arabic term for the river is Al-Asi. And so it's obviously very ironic and very poetic that the disobedient square is where this took place. And they are essentially the children of the people who witnessed that horrific massacre 30 years later, rising up, being able to shake off the shackles of oppression and most importantly of fear, and say, you know what, we're not going to have it anymore. So to have the people of Hama with me in the hook of the song was very moving for me. At the end of the song, I recite about 8 bars in Arabic from a verse written by a man by the name of Ibrahim Qashush, who's become a mythical figure in the Syrian revolution. He was for all intents and purposes, basically just a street poet. He was, I believe, a fireman actually, but he wrote verses and he was leading the chants in Asi Square night in and night out. And many of these chants, which involve a lot of call and response, just like hip hop, were basically, you could say mocking the regime. And they really wouldn't even receive like an explicit rating or like a G rating here, but for Syria, that was a huge, huge thing. For somebody to even say something as simple as "Screw you, Mr. President," to speak was a very, very big deal. So, in the footage actually of this particular one that he sang called "Yalla irhal ya Bashar," oh come on, leave Bashar. You see the people just going crazy when he says that particular part of it. Now, just for a little bit of background, I know it makes a lot of Arabs laugh. It's kind of like saying "screw you" or "forget you." The origin of the word is actually Turkish. It means salt in Turkish. And it's because when the Ottoman Empire had ruled, the customs officers didn't charge for salt. And so when they would come and there'd be these merchants with their boxes, they would say, oh, toast, don't worry about it, it's just salt. It happens to sound a lot like another word, which means derriere. And so people kind of laugh, at that kind of correlation. But in fact, the origin of the word is just salt. Anyway. After singing that and it catching like wildfire across Syria and eventually across the world, this man was born, and the regime ended up finding this person and captured him and killed him and removed his vocal cords and threw him in the Asi River. His body was found floating in the river. And so while they were trying to silence him, what they ended up doing was in fact immortalizing him. And his words became even that much more powerful to the people who were singing them and chanting them. You heard them echoed all across the world. You even saw different variations of that particular Yalla Irhal taking place in Egypt and Palestine and all these other parts of the world. And so I decided to put it at the end of the song also. And so as I said, الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام is what you could call a hook, but you can just say
إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام
and the people united will never be defeated. I repeat,
يريد إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد
إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام الليلة منكم كلكم يا أولاد الحرام. Listen. verses is to unify the masses. Homes up to Hesek, Benias to Damascus, city streets to countrysides, mountaintops to coastal tides, Muslim, Christian, women, men, and children. Keep hope alive, stand in solidarity with all your fellow citizens, peacefully protesting for an end to all the militants, torture and imprisonment, murdering of innocents, proving that these lying leaders' rule is illegitimate. Like father, like son, mobster or president, censoring their people, trying to stop the embezzlement. Heavy-handed iron fist dropped on the residents. Deja vu, 82 or 11, and we are all dead as all. We are all we are all this is Lord Halabana Allah. We are all Hamza. We are all Hama. We are all Syrian. Hands to the center, saying.
يريد إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام
And the people united will never be defeated.
الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام
الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام الليلة منكم كلكم يا ولاد الحرام. Listen. Now I have a dream this regime will fall, and that what comes next is going to be better for us all. Arabi, Dirzi, Armani, Kirdi, equality in parliament, and Kun Ilo Kirsi, envisioning a future that's brighter for the youth who've been fighting for the right to shed light upon the truth, biting bullets from the troops. Thus far, the truce has proven elusive, but martyrs are tightening the noose on corruption, bribery, nepotism, tribal disputes. Don't shoot with your mechanism. Soon comes the reckoning that loom. Second guessing the protesters was a recipe for Essa to address his own doom. It's been a long time coming, and there's no turning back now. And these military crackdowns, millions on the streets in defiance of your gat sounds. Look who's got you shook, got to don't know how to act now. إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. And the people united will never be defeated. I repeat. يريد إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام الليلة منكم كلكم يا ولاد الحرام. إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام الشعب يريد إسقاط النظام. يا بشار ويا كذاب وتضرب انت وهالخطاب الحريه صارت على الباب ويلا
ارحل
يا ماهر ويا جبان ويا عميل الشيطان الشعب السوري ما ينهان ويلا
ارحل
يا بشار طز فيك طز بري يحييك والله بقف طلع فيك ويلا
ارحل
يا بشار حاجه تدور دمك في حمامه هدور وخطأك ما مغفور ويلا
ارحل